Berlin Art Stories by Luka Bunic.
Hi Laura, hello.
Hi.
So nice to have you here.
Yes.
I'm excited. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, me
Shall
too.
we introduce you, or how do we do this?
You start. You can introduce me.
I can only say you are one of my favorite Berlin artists, Laura Bruce.
Thank you.
And maybe just tell us, like, your long time here, I know, in Berlin, but where do you actually originally come from?
Well, I'm from Union, New Jersey. New Jersey is a small state south of New York City, or the state of New York. And our nickname of our state was the Bridge and Tunnel People, because we could only enter Manhattan either through a tunnel or over a bridge. It's also where the famous TV series The Soprano was filmed. There's a lot of famous people come from New Jersey: Blondie, Bruce Springsteen, Thoreau, many others, Patti Smith. Yeah, that's where I come from.
Cool. So you are basically like a East Coast person. So it's a big difference, since like I now learn more about states like East or West. It's a huge difference. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, New York and this area is amazing. And yeah, what brought you to Berlin? You are in Berlin now. You told me when we've been on the way, like 35 years, you said, or something.
I think 35 years. I got here on the 21st of September, 1990.
Okay.
So that's a long time ago. And, you know, I never knew I'd spend my life here, but it turned out that way. And love brought me here. Often it's either love or war, but with me it was love. And I was here from 90 to 95, and then I went to London to do my master's degree at the Slade School. That's an art school in London, and stayed in London for 4 years. And then I returned in 1990, and then I was sure that I wanted to make Berlin my home. I think the first 5 years, it was just really cool. The wall had just come down. There was this thriving art scene, and there was this wonderful mixture of contemporary and grunge all going on at the same time. I moved pretty quickly to East Berlin and in the Prenzlauer Berg area, where a lot of artists lived back then. Yeah, so that's what brought me to Berlin.
Crazy. You've been living in really interesting times then. So you've seen the transformation of the city also. And what do you think? Did Berlin already started to be like gentrified, expensive like other cities like London and New York or so on? Or there is still space to...
You mean now?
Yeah.
Well, I read recently that Berlin, of 2 or 3 cities in Germany, has the fastest rising rents of all of the entire country. And when I hear about people looking for apartments now, what they pay, it's just crazy to what we had back then. But what we had back then wasn't realistic. You know, Berlin was made attractive because it was an isolated city in East Germany, and people didn't want to live there because of that. When the wall came down, it just became a major center of interest, and obviously then rents went back up. So I think it's not as easy as it used to be. Yeah, I think it's gentrified, or just became a lot more international. I think it's also what I think could be a problem in Berlin, that it's quite transient. People come and go quite quickly, which also raises rents very quickly. But it's still a thriving, wonderful city, and it's my home, and I love it. I love Berlin. So.
I love Berlin too. Yeah. So how did your career went? Like, maybe to take us a little timeline. You know, when you just came to Berlin, so you've probably been adapting, and then I picked you up now at your studio, which is beautiful, and there is other artists. And you told me that you have like a community that actually bought, which is very rare. Maybe you can talk a bit about studio / getting the studio, making a career a bit, how hard it is in Berlin, because everybody is an artist in a way.
Okay, where should I start?
15
that
questions,
was a lot
I'm
right
sorry.
Then. I'll start at
Pick one.
Making a career. I'll start from the beginning, otherwise, I'll get confused.
Yeah.
Well, when I came, I was an artist. I hadn't done my master's degree yet, and that's something I always wanted to do. But there was just so much opportunity here. And a lot of it was because you didn't have to break your butt earning your rent. I mean, I came from New York and I was working 2 jobs. I was waitressing during the day. I was working at a frame shop in the afternoon. 3 jobs. And I was bartending at night. So, it left very little space for yourself or for making work, So you were very concentrated when you made your work. And we had very small studios that cost us an arm and a leg, and not that many exhibition opportunities. Not that there weren't any, but when I got to Berlin, there were just so many like grassroots projects, like places opening up. I remember what's now Kunstwerke was basically a garage. You just opened a garage and it was just a couple of guys who then became very established, creating a very impromptu exhibition space in an abandoned building that hadn't been used in decades. So, and Tacheles was the same thing. Tacheles was literally a garage with a garage door, and there was a fold-out table, and that was where the drinks were, and they made one meal, like a pasta dish. I can't remember what it cost, maybe €3 or something, and the bathrooms weren't lit, and the floor in the bathrooms were sort of squidgy, and you didn't want to look what was down there. But but it was just an exciting place where everything was possible. And there was the space to do it. There was the physical space to do it, but there was also the financial space to do it. And so that's, I guess, just how everyone's career here started. You just showed, and you hoped that it reached an audience that appreciated what you did and that you got more opportunities from that. But I still wanted to do my master's degree, so I left for London in 95 and was there from 95 to 99. And when I came back then,
Berlin,
Berlin,
what did you do the master's in?
In sculpture, actually. Sculpture at the Slade School of Fine Art.
Okay, and then?
So yeah, I first studied painting. I did sculpture, then video, and then I concentrated on drawing. So I have quite a range of media and subject
you do
matter.
different media I've seen. Yeah.
And when I came back in 99, back to Prenzlauer Berg, Berlin had radically changed. It was just like in those 5 or 4 years that I was in London, Prenzlauer Berg was not the Prenzlauer Berg I left before. There were suddenly, I don't know, tons of cafes almost on every corner. The grungy bars were gone, and it definitely changed in those 4 years, I think.
Already.
Yeah. Then
they say the areas of the city in Berlin are changing every 5 to 10 years because the people get older, stop going out, get the kids, and then the scene moves to another area. Like they're talking now that it's in the moment in Friedrichshain. It used to be in Prenzlauer Berg, what you are talking about.
When I was here, it was definitely Prenzlauer Berg. When I first moved there, you're right. That areas of cities have also a lifeline, and you're right. People move there because it's cheap. Usually it's cheap, so it's young. And then comes, the secondhand clothing shops and the barista cafes. And then people get older and have kids, you're right. And then no one goes out anymore, and then it gets expensive, and then it relives that whole thing.
Yeah.
But I pretty much stayed in, Prenzlauer Berg, Mitte, Wedding, all around that area. Yeah,
it's a nice area where you have studio. I really like it. It's Mitte is it's very approachable to everywhere, and so. And so you came back, so sculpture and. In States, you did like the first part of your education, yeah?
Yeah, I did my bachelor's degree upstate New York at SUNY New Paltz, which was also a great little town in the mountains, very rock and roll and alternative, and we had great years there. I visited there because I was in the States in October for 2 weeks, and with a friend that I knew in New Paltz back then, we drove up from New Jersey to New Paltz. It's not that far; it's a 3-hour drive to visit that town, and we were surprised at how little it changed. I thought it would have changed, but it's still little buildings, colorful buildings made of wood and barista shops. It was great. And so I did my master's degree there in painting, and then at the Slade I did sculpture. And I did sculpture at the Slade, not necessarily because I wanted to change my focus into sculpture, but at the Slade, the painting department was a completely different building, very separate from the main campus. And I felt too isolated there. I wanted to be exposed to people working in different media and different departments, and also wanted that type of freedom in my own work, which then led me to the sculpture department, because I felt in the sculpture department I had more opportunity and space to work in a variety of media. Yeah.
What would you say now? What is your favorite media?
Oh.
It's a blunt question, but I'm just trying to put you a little bit on a fire with like deciding which one.
Yeah.
Like, because you do performances, you do video installations, you do a lot of crayon chalk drawings, the
color pencil,
color pencil drawings, and then you do a lot of ceramics, sculptures, ceramics, and that's. What is the biggest size of the sculptures you're doing at the moment, or in general you're interested in?
Well, the largest sculptures I did, I'm not doing at the moment right now. I'm doing smaller ones. I guess, maybe about 40 centimeters high would be the smallest. But I did, previously, I did sculptures in epoxy, and I guess they were maybe up to a meter. I'm not interested personally in doing very large sculptures. I like them to be quite attainable size-wise. But my favorite media, that's very hard to say, but I think the media I feel closest to, I think you also have a relationship to the sensuality of a media, and I like the sensuality of soft graphite on paper.
Exactly.
There's just something very beautiful about it. There's a sound that I think like a real painter likes, when he has like moving this mass of paint across whatever surface you're painting on. That's also there's a sensuality to that.
Yeah.
And I like that dry sort of soft scratch. Yeah. And also
calming, so calming. One model told us a long time ago she loves to pose. An older woman, many years, 50 years model in academy. She says, I'm addicted to these like 50, 20, 30 students like with the chalk on the paper.
It is. It's a very beautiful, soft. Like a lot of people say how drawing's so direct. Quite honestly, I think every media is direct. If your hand is touching it, it's direct. So if you're, what I mean by that is your hand is on a paintbrush, just like my hand is on a pencil or a graphite pencil. And okay, of course you can paint over, when you're painting, you can paint over that, but you can also erase and redraw. I find it all direct personally. And if you really want to get super direct, then that's ceramics, because that's really, at least how I do it, the product of my hand touching that directly. There's no second party there. There's no pencil in between or a paintbrush or a microphone if I'm singing, it's like you're really just directly onto that. So,
there is something primal in this clay
I think so,
sculpture. Attracts me a lot. My father was a sculptor, so
okay. So you say,
yeah, I can totally relate what you're talking about. Yeah, maybe we can show some of your works. I mean, from the phone, I sent you some of the, because there is so much stuff you have done when I checked your website and I know a bit about your work, that I literally took a little kind of, I don't know, grains of the sands of the sea of your production, because it's massive. So we'll just touch some of the stuff and probably maybe not even explain the whole concepts about them. So maybe you can kind of lead us through it. When you say drawings, what would you take out from these last things, maybe, so I can later put it up there?
I think I'm looking at what you chose, and it's interesting because it is a real wide variety of what I do. And I see you have, the first one you have here is a street scene. It's a black and white drawing. It's graphite on paper. I love graphite. I love really soft graphite. And I that was towards the end of a period of time when I was concentrating on landscapes, but I have to actually lead into that.
Yes, please.
Because when I went to at the Slade, I began working in video, and it was then a few years after I had left America, where I, was born and raised, and which formed me, and I was in Europe, and I think everyone who leaves where they were born and raised starts to look back at where they came from and what they came from, and
throws you into perspective, like an astronaut gets out.
Yeah, it's a completely different perspective, and it's not necessarily a judgmental one. It's just suddenly you become hyper self-aware that you are also a product of your past and of your cultural background, of all of that. And
interesting.
So the first video works I started doing on were mostly sort of like about my family at home, and when I looked at them through a video camera, it changed that perspective and turned it into a type of narrative for me that I could look at. Those works developed into.
I mean, these are beautiful.
Yeah.
These are technically so well done. I mean, it's like, this is a charcoal technically.
Yeah.
Charcoal or pencil?
It's graphite.
Graphite.
So
it's
precise. Like a pencil, but it's very. So these video works, after for me that story was told, they turned into the graphite landscape drawings of now the area I came from, which was this incredible nature, which is still sort of wild and unpredictable. And also, I came from an area where we had, storms and hurricanes and tornadoes. And so there was something quite awe-inspiring about that. And that's what I was concentrating on. And so
I saw these drawings. I might later put some of those, because there is like literally some of them that show kind of a feather, clouds like accumulating over, and there is like a whole light hole over the landscape, and then it's dark. You know what I mean? Those drawings, I'll put them out too.
Yeah.
Normally I print out artists' works, but since it's Sunday, we will have to manage from your phone, and we will put
so
it
I'm
out
looking
there.
at my phone.
Yeah, so
check,
if I understood well, Laura, you did these works when you already relocated. So like it's like a little like turn back, and so you did them here, or?
I did them here. All these works, all the works that you've chosen, I did here. It was after the Slade. It was when my practice intensified, and the graphite drawings developed over a period of time, and became a main focus, where pretty much that's all I did. I did the black and white landscapes, and it was something that fascinated me for years. Also, just there's also abstract elements, of course, when you're working like that. So I was very interested in working in black and white, and not being able to choose color, to have to create a composition where it was only based on the gray tones. Then you have the shapes. So it's a tree and it's a house, but they're also shapes. So a house is also some type of rectangular shape, and the trees became increasingly blob forms or tower type of forms. So
it's on the border of abstract, these other elements around the motive that is fixated and figurative. I love it. I know one, I didn't put it there. There is a building, and there is like just sticking a little bit like a house, and then there is a lot of interesting abstract forms that are kind of trees and the nature.
Yeah, I think that this is when I started playing around more with the shapes of the trees, because I wasn't interested in articulating a tree with each leaf and each branch, because that's boring, and it's tedious, which is worse than boring, and deadly actually for a drawing. So I needed to find a way to draw the trees that stayed interesting for me, and also interesting in themselves. So they became like these spinning blobs, or just the outlines of trees, or shapes. And then they they started getting type of character as well. And that's when the drawing started tipping for me that the protagonists in the work was the nature, was the trees. I started thinking they have a life of their own, like we always think we're the only people, we're the only living beings that have our own little narrative, but I don't know if that's necessarily true.
But they are emotional. And this is what I like about them. Your landscapes, these drawing specific series, they are so there's so much emotion into it, and it's black and white. It's like you expressed a lot, and that's why I put them there, because I really like them. And obviously you are very technically good at drawing, but that's not the first thing. Sometimes people are chasing this, as you said, a narrative, like not the narrative, but description. And yours I really like, because they immediately struck me with some kind of emotions. Like there is almost a nostalgic feeling into it, but with the beauty, with more like admiring. And then now when you say it's actually a kind of reflection back to it, a little astral flight. Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's also, I think the black and white was something that helped me also get a filmic aspect to it, something. And so the nostalgia, it's maybe wasn't so much nostalgia, but yes, I was thinking black and white photography and black and white films. So there is something historic about it, or maybe a timelessness as well, something like that. And also, it was just I just fell in love with graphite. It's just beautiful because you can be incredibly precise if you've sharpened the graphite pencil very well. You let it get unsharpened and you smear it. It can pretty much do everything that you want, except do maybe huge with one big brush.
That's
you could
exactly
do.
what I wanted to say. It takes time.
Yeah.
So there is a element that attracts you with something like this process that goes slow and calm.
I think, and considered. But you're
still
trying
you're
to
so
balance.
Temperament.
Yeah, you're trying
so
to balance this considered and balance and this compositional aspects, and at the same time, there's more underneath there. So
the tension of the time that it takes to be done, and the emotion that is like bursting underneath. Yeah, this is what I see in them. And then maybe this, this one that has a lot of very well done, beautiful portraits. That's the concept that is called, it has, I even put it somewhere here, something with love, I think, or can you help me with the title of the concept with
the portraits?
With the portraits,
the very realistic portraits.
Yeah,
it's an installation. It's 10 portraits of country western singers from the 60s and 70s, 50s,
Dolly
60s
Parton
and 70s.
and so on. Yes, yes, I remember now. Yeah.
A time when music was still quite analog, and you could just go with a guitar to a radio station and hopefully they'll let you play. Okay. And to me, there was something quite innocent about that. And
what's the title?
Sorry.
It's super interesting.
Goodbye is half the words you know.
Yeah, goodbye is the half the word. It's so made me think.
Goodbye is half the words you know.
So it's tell us about how the works looks like.
Yeah. First, I will say that the title is also taken from a song, and I liked it because for me it's sort of obviously there's something with love in it, and longing and lost, and also a bit of the kitsch type of title of lyrics that country western has that everyone can identify with anyway. And that project was born out of a collaboration with a man named Lushi from Tel Aviv, a collector of mine, who invited several artists he knew in Berlin to create a project, which is what he called. And so he was a great inspiration for this. He really basically talked me into doing it, because I was thinking, a project, what do I do? A type of project. And he says, well, Laura, you like country western music and you really like to sing. Why don't you think about something like that? And that also works with your the landscapes you're doing. There's a type of an Americana involved in that. And I didn't want to admit that, but maybe he was right. And I said, okay. So I started drawing, I don't know. I started drawing, maybe because I guess lots of artists don't like definitions too much, so, and rightly or wrongly. And so I did one or two of these portraits, and then I realized it just wasn't going to work with just one or two of these portraits. Like, why,
Yeah.
And then I started thinking of the idea of an archive, and that 10 is a good number. So, I said, okay, 10.
Yeah.
And then I realized if I'm drawing them, I need to also, there has to be a musical aspect to it. This has to go to a different level. And I found a guitarist, Laurent Lavolée, a French guy who grew up with the same music I did and rejected it as I did when I was a younger person. Because for me, it was like mom and dad's music. It was like A, country, western, E, And then it took me many years to give it another listen and really discover something that I wasn't able to, didn't want to see or understand back in the day. And we just started covering a couple of the songs by the people I drew, and that grew into a band. And then we didn't cover them, we completely rearranged them and reinterpreted these songs. Oh. So now the installation is these 10 drawings framed, and in front of each drawing is a plinth, and on the plinth there's headphones like these, and then you can listen to our version of the song that one portraited singer made famous. And it is now on display, this installation, in Edinburgh at the Edinburgh City Arts Centre. Oh. And it was curated by Vita Vatena and Ewan Gray, and in an exhibition called Pop Life. So
that's crazy. Yeah. So it found a nice place. That's good. That's so good. And you sing it.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you're really like wide. Your expression is wide. I'm surprised now, even singing. Yeah, actually, on your opening there was also an interesting musician. Two musicians also. I think they were really also nice and fun. So you are also hanging with a lot of musicians and so on.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. That's so cool. Okay, before we get to another works, can you say? I don't know why this question always, since I first saw your works come to my mind, somehow it always comes back. When I see your latest works now, actually, they evoke some kind of like it's almost etherical bodies, etherical. I told you that this Anne Brennan, I had a book about the woman who is a healer. She kind of find out that there is entities living in sometimes of ancestors in our auras after they die and didn't find the peace. Something that resembles to an old native scripts that I've seen in Indians and American Indians. And so when I see your works, you said it's not that, but somehow I have to ask you again, they look to me like, I don't know, it's like kind of, or something is coming and enriching the body, or there is some kind of exchange, or maybe we can look at the work and then I can put the work there. But you know what I mean? I don't know if you remember that question I asked you there.
No, I do.
On the
I remember
exhibition.
Very well. You mean these type of drawings?
Yeah, these type of drawings, and also these ones here. These ones are where are these ones? These ones, like this kind of like
these. Okay,
auras.
I understand.
Yeah. This is what I mean.
Well, I have to go back as well, because all of these things in these drawings, and yes, you're right. My work varies very much from body of work to body of work, but they always come back, and my work has never developed in a linear form. For me, it develops in a type of looping. So you're always coming back to areas you have been before, but with the knowledge of where you are now. Then there's, so that they keep feeding the past of my work and the future of my work. So I have to go back to the landscapes because of this, because in the landscape sort of everything was born. So around these tree-like shapes and bush-like shapes, I would use the eraser quite a bit with these. And I began doing sort of like an anti-shadow. So I found that as I was drawing, the paper obviously took on some of this graphite dust, got dirty, not really, but, dirty with graphite dust. And especially with the palm of my hand, because the palm of my hand was touching the paper. So if I was drawing a round tree, the palm of my hand would create a type of shadow around the outside of the tree because my hand was moving along the paper in the same shape. I didn't want that shadow, so I erased it. And this wonderful thing happened because the rest of the paper was dirty or dirtified. I love that because it's not really a word, but dirtified from the graphite. When I erased the smear my hand had made, an aura appeared, like a halo. It was like an anti-shadow. And this was just a wonderful thing because that just gave me so much, because it was really like an aura or a light coming out,
It comes from there.
Yeah, that's the origins. And also with these landscape drawings, like at one point I do feel like I've told the story, and that I'm ready to move on, or the work is ready to move on. And I think that started happening when the trees and the bushes became more and more as objects, and became more and more towers or spinning, natural shapes, organic shapes, and less tree-like. If we fast forward to the works that you're mentioning now, I try to approach the figure in the same way, that there's stretchings going on so that it's not a literal figure. And this idea of things emanating from the figure or from a shape, it doesn't have to just be a figure, because it happens in works of mine where it's an organic shape that's not recognizable immediately as a figure or a tree or something. This idea of something emanating is, for me, it's a change of states from solid to non-solid, and that there's always a type of exchange between the inside and the outside, the inner and the outer, the solid and the gaseous.
Hysterical. So, and then even more, fast forward on your last exhibition in front room, there were drawings that are, I think, the latest ones. Am I right?
They're very new. Yeah.
So these etherical bodies, still kind of figurative, abstract, floating into each other, kind of ethereal bodies, I would call them. Then they started to morph into more geometrical and very clean, very almost like oriental vibe into them. Just a lot of patience, and then the more color came, and the pencils were, how do you call this in English?
Color pencils.
Color pencils.
Yeah,
yes.
Simply color. Yeah.
Yes, simply. I'll put those, but we know now both materials. Can you a little bit talk about how that? Because for me, it's suddenly, but how it went, how it morphed into.
Yeah, I mean, suddenly is a right and a wrong word, because there's things in my head, like if we saw other previous drawings, you would see how the circle or spherical shape started becoming clearer and more, not articulated in exactitude, but more differentiated from the rest. So I started getting interested in the shape and shapes. Yeah, I always was, but I started getting interested in shapes for themselves, and I wanted to sort of leave the articulation that was in the landscape drawings, because they're highly articulated, the landscape drawings.
True.
And I wanted to work faster, and I guess less articulated. So I moved from the graphite drawings to ink on paper, and ink is highly difficult to control. I think harder even than watercolor, because for water, it was like ink, if you're working on wet paper and you have ink on a brush, even if it's just a drop of black ink, or let it be any color ink, you put it on the paper, it just explodes. So you're trying to push it in and pull it back, and trying to figure sometimes I'd be like, too much, So it was interesting, and it was like running after a toddler, it was like, come back, and
That's great.
it was a lot of fun. It was very different to working with the graphite, which was very so here suddenly you had this
accidents,
ink
control
running away from you, and Yeah, but I forgot your question now. I think
No,
I went
it's
on a,
it's
I went
just.
on a
I mean, for me,
tangent.
it's a sudden because there were sudden
Yes.
two rooms, but it's not sudden. It's an
Yeah.
evolvement. So maybe
It's
a
an
little bit.
evolvement, yeah. So, and hence the show at Parterre, I chose also together with the curator, Bjorn Brovsleski, very difficult for me to pronounce. We wanted to show work that grew from the past and how it became the work which it is today. So the earliest works in that show is an installation also of 10 drawings. I seem to like that number, called Sounds That Clouds Make. That was also when I had the band and I was dealing a lot with sounds. And that was the first abstract works where there was shapes and they seemed to be moving. And I just like this idea, sounds that clouds make if you're up there,
How did you do it? Can you describe a bit? Take us through the exhibition, how it looked like. So there was also some flags, or I'm wrong?
No
I saw on
flags.
your website some flags with the cloud.
Oh yeah, I had one flag, it's cloud. Yeah, that was my little cloud. I thought of Pinocchio. So I did a cloud that was like I drew that was looked like a cartoon cloud actually, and it was in a Biennale in Austria. And it was flying high, and I just thought, like, Pinocchio wanted to be a real boy, and my cloud wanted to be a real cloud. So
And to have a sound. What's the sound of the clouds? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like
so
that.
you did in studio the sound and everything by yourself, with the friends.
Well, no, with the sounds that clouds make. That's a drawing series that was in the exhibition at Gallery Parterre. That was the beginning point of the exhibition. That was the work that was in the middle room of how these became abstracted forms and the graphite drawings. Then in the back room of the exhibition was a series of, I believe, 42, I'm not sure, maybe 36 ink on papers, which are amorphic, organic forms that are figurative and not. And then in the front of the exhibition were the new drawings that you're talking about, the very where a lot of geometric forms are used. And then throughout the exhibition, I think linking the exhibition were the smaller ceramic works. There were 32 ceramic works in the exhibition too.
It's a little bit like a retrospective, a little exhibition from you, no?
I guess so, although...
How many years it covers?
From 2015 till 2024.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Crazy. I love the works. I don't know which one. I mean, behind in the other room, they really struck me a lot. And these front ones that are more geometrical shapes with the color pencils, they're something like spacey alien life into them. I don't know if you ever heard this.
Yeah, I did actually. Or you're some sort of like visualized future from the past, or I can only say how I did them, how they look. It's really
please.
was not planned. So it wasn't planned like what you just said. I didn't have that in mind, that I want something to look like that. But I'd had a year break in doing work. I had to go to the States to care for my father. So I didn't do any artwork at all for a year. I thought I could. I thought, I'm going to the States to care for my father. But I realized that caring for him was a lot more involved than I thought, and very enjoyable. And I thought, okay, I can go back to work when I get. But that sort of gave me a type of restart. And there was a lot of things that I had wanted to explore, wanted to start doing. But sometimes it's hard to get out of what you've been doing for many years, like the landscapes and all of this other stuff. And when I came back, I just said, Laura, don't think about what you did before. Just work without thinking. Don't think. Don't try to connect it to anything, And these series came out, and I think I think also they're quite architectural because they're quite built. They're not so flowing like the ink works in the last room of the exhibition. It's a very different way of constructing the composition. They are much more constructed. And I think all of the shapes that had been developing in the landscape drawings and even in the ink drawings just sort of came together in quite a clear and ordered and an attempt at balance. The colors are important. I find them harder to talk about than the landscapes because there's a lot of things with the landscapes I can sort of land on, like Americana and nature as protagonist. These were so just came out almost of nowhere that they're sort of harder for me to talk about.
And they're totally different than anything you did because you're mostly based on nature or some kind of, like I would say, drawing inspiration from figurative, and they're completely abstract, and it's landed like suddenly. So it was like, I don't know, this one professor, I wanted to ask you about what you think about this shortly. One professor told me, like, when we make a pause, as you said, like you had this 1 year of pause taking care of your father. Do you think, he said, like, try not to make big pauses because you will always continue where you stopped. But in your case,
that's totally not in my case.
Yeah,
no,
I never agreed. In a way, I did when I didn't. It's weird. I think sometimes pauses are part of process. You don't paint, but you experience life, and
you're still working up here.
Yeah,
I mean, we never stop working, and I mean, I don't know. I've had pauses in my work, and never as much as a whole year. But I know it's something artists are always afraid of if they're, they think I'm not making any work. But I think these pauses are quite important. I think basically it's however you work. Everyone needs to find their way to work, and I have pauses that go my way. I usually work in cycles. So I'll have a cycle, and then that cycle will end and the new cycle will start. But then the next cycle might go back to the previous cycle and bring something from the last one, meaning this loop that I was talking about. I know that when something starts to become ritualistic, I usually need to move on for a bit. I mean, I think that's
interesting.
Yeah, if something starts to become ritualistic, too repetitive, I just have so many ideas going on in my head.
I see.
I just do.
When I look at the portfolio, it's like all over the place.
And still, you don't want to be like in that sense all over the place.
No, in a positive way.
I know. I totally understand. I'm building on that. Otherwise it's not. It's just then by chance. But you have like these different ideas, and if you're dealing with them in a good way, you realize they're all very related and interrelated, but each tells its own story. We
cannot run away actually from our own core, and if it's authentic, I think it's always kind of, as you said, loops, spirals. Some people say, and so on. What do you think? Something a little bit more like anecdotal. What was the most interesting something that sticked in your mind from the comments from the audience that you got, like from people, and something that maybe made you think or struck you, or something totally stupid or funny? I've never asked nobody this question. I don't know, like.
Oh, but this is funny. Someone wrote in the book. What'd they say? What'd they say again? I can't remember exactly how they said it. Basically, it was like, we're talking about the drawings, the new drawings in the front room that do have, I guess, some type of a futuristic, which is weird, but anyway, like that type of feeling, whichever, I don't have a word for it yet, feeling. Someone wrote in the book that she wanted to come back stoned and look at them. That she thought it would be really good to look at the new drawings if you were stoned.
There is some psychedelic.
There is something in it, and it was the farthest from my mind. I was just trying to build something. Actually, I wanted to not think. I think that was it. I think sometimes working and thinking too much is not, for me, the most fulfilling way of doing work.
A figurative. Calls for thinking in a way.
Yeah, if you want it to be very, anatomically
descriptive
correct,
and anatomically
you
correct,
need to
and
actually
you are good
really,
at this.
and I think I also wanted to free myself of being good at that.
Yeah, there we go. Now we came to
and I think like after those very realistic portraits of the country western singers, I really felt the need. I mean, I love working with the figure because, we're so emotional and we are such a mixture of inner and outer and who we are and who we want to be or where we come from and where we're going. I mean, we are such complex, obviously, beings. So anytime you work with the figure, you're working with all of that. So, but yeah.
Talking about the audience Berlin versus international audience, you have probably experience with both, I believe. And maybe just, I'm curious a bit how people react to your works here versus maybe somewhere else. In Berlin, can be Europe, can be States.
I haven't noticed a big difference, to tell you the truth. No,
that's what I thought. I've just
yeah.
So not too.
No, I'm thinking about it. It's an interesting question, really, because I haven't thought about that, but I haven't noticed a big difference. No.
Also, your drawings, when I looked at them first, I was like, yeah, they're so nice, they're so precise. And then when I realized the formats, these drawings of the nature we talked about in the beginning, they are not, I thought it's A3 or something like that. Because they look so, it's like they look like they're done in a small size. So I know how hard it is to kind of, let's say, conquer the format, the bigger format. They look very precise, but then when you realize the strokes are actually big, and how long it takes to make one of those? Did it fast or?
I've been asked that so many times, and I don't know, because I never counted the hours. Because sometimes, especially before I had internet in my studio, I would draw, and then you sort of need to take a break for whatever reason. You need to. Like sometimes I always thought like making those drawings, it's like playing chess. You make a move and then that creates a type of a future of moves. So you have to sort of play it out through your head. If I do that here, this might happen. And then I've got to get this. And then there's this darker part there. How do I manage that? So there's always that type of analytical things going on with those works, And then so sometimes I wasn't physically drawing, but I would sit in front of the drawing and just stare at it. For up to an hour, sometimes I'd fall asleep in front of it. So I don't know how long it took in actual work hours, but I would guess somewhere between 3 and maybe 5 weeks, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I actually wanted to touch the point that what I think and what I learned also from my father. He was an artist, and he showed me some Velázquez works, and he said, "Look, it looks so done so fast and in a heap of a moment," and that's what I found quality in your works. So they're done very fast, but actually it took time. So, but the feeling is, because sometimes when people are technical, it can get like stuck in this technical feeling. But yours are first feelings, and then this is what I really find interesting in your works.
I think that's a nice thing that you said, because this was something I was very aware of, because I was working on a very large paper. The format's 155 by 114 centimeters, and that has a very banal reason, because that's how wide the paper is on the roll, and my table is 155 wide, so I would just stretch it out and cut it, and it ends up being this wonderful format that's like now my format, but it's just simply, has really nothing to do with a personal choice.
Yeah.
But you have a graphite pencil, and it has a very small little tip, and then you have this huge piece of paper. So how do you get something to look spontaneous and flowing from pure energy rather than studied? Because you're not able to cover much space in a quick time. So it's not like ink on a brush where you can just go like this and you've got this great like spontaneous gesture. It was something I was aware of, that the marks of the graphite would still look like a spontaneous gesture on the paper. And often, if you look at it, there's certain shapes were drawn quite quickly.
Yes, that's why.
In order to get that, in order to also, just because that was me, because it's just, so you want to jump like,
yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, that answers the question. Yeah, this is so there is this energy, hold it. The flow is there still. It's not choked by the technique.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was hoping not. So yeah.
Since you are very good at drawing and you are really, I will ask you a question that I didn't ask my previous guests. What do you think about, is it necessary, I think you will know what I'm talking about, visual elements, like there is 7 of them if you would Google the visual elements. This is like a notes for us, like a knowledge. Do you think it's necessary to express emotions, like dot, line, to know them, to make, to orchestrate the elements that they serve, even if it's a portrait, that they give the soul of a person, but only if you know. So it's not descriptive from outside. You paint the skull first and then the meat, bones. You know how they teach us at academies. So some academies are not teaching anymore this older knowledge where the visual elements are used to express emotions. You know what I mean? Do you think it's important to know this today, or is it in general? Because somehow I feel you're using consciously, or I don't know how you make it, but I see that you are kind of controlling these. Even you say like, where is the dark spots, where is the lines, where is strong, where is this? Do you need these things to express emotions?
I don't think you do. I think you need. I think that's a complex question. I think you can express. I think okay, and there's a lot of different levels to your question. So on the most superficial level, I don't know if you need that type of classical training. I think that's what you mean. The classical training in order to express emotions. That's a question that we've had for a long time. It was why photography was first rejected when photography came out. Is that really art? Because it's not an artist controlling basically.
Yeah.
Controlling a line in order to achieve a certain effect. I'm very happy that I have that classical training, but I didn't do an anatomy. I didn't have that type of a classical training. I had drawing, but it was I never had technical drawing or anatomy or anything like that. I just
draw a lot.
Drew what I saw.
And a lot.
Yeah,
because
and a
they're
lot.
really skilled.
I looked very carefully. And yeah, I looked very carefully. And that I can still say that for these very new drawings, of which I'm continuing now. The series of drawings, it makes it easier to talk about them. The new ones that were in the gallery, Pater talk, was called the dewdrop machines. So a dewdrop. And because for me, there was this mixture, yes, of nature. There's a lot of drop-like forms, droplets. There's still the type of that emanating. There's things, for me, there's still an exchange between solid and liquid and inner and outer. For me, there's all the basics are there. But this constructed area of it, like, circle holding up another shape, which holds up another and held together. There was something quite mechanical, machine-like to it. So for me, there was, and some of them ended up looking somehow like faces or heads, which I didn't expect, but I think that was interesting. Nonetheless, I still think that there is that precision of looking in these new drawings, even if it's not, the result isn't a realistic portrait or a tree or a house. I think there's something in me, there's a love and a hate religion. Oh, that's an interesting Freudian slip. There's a love and a hate relationship with precision and articulation. It's something I can't get away from. And it's something at the same time I think, gosh, I should get away from it. And maybe these newest drawings, these dewdrop machines, are an attempt to deal with that precision, but still an openness. So, yeah.
Of not thinking, but at the same time, they take a lot of precision.
Yeah.
So like machines, you even mentioned machines. That's very interesting. I didn't think about it. Do you think you will continue in this direction more now, without so much thinking, but at the same time, this kind of style that you're doing at the moment?
I think so. Actually, I'm doing now. Like before you picked me up, I was working on a new one. for a show with my colleague Heidi Sill. We have a double show in April, and
In Berlin?
in Berlin, at a place called VDBK in Schöneberg. And I'm working on a new series of large format drawings that will definitely take on a similar approach to the ones we were talking about, the dewdrop machines. I'm not finished with that series yet, so I'm interested in it still
That's
very much.
quite exciting, I think, now, because it's a bit like different than what you did before. So, yeah, it's cool that it's so. Would you say it's a bit like maybe the more mature we get, the more we go into unknown, and at the same time, maybe we try to control things, which is in your case?
I think it's different for every person. But I think it's also when you've been making work for so long, I've been making work for a long time. I think it's very natural to want to move in and out of things, and and that's nothing against people who end up doing quite similar works over decades and decades and decades. I still think if you look at that work very carefully, you'll see how that artist changed, even if they're still doing landscapes with figures in them. But I remember when I went to, there was a wonderful retrospective of Matisse's work at I believe the Hayward Gallery in London a few years ago. And I went to see it. And I was just amazed at the directions his work took, starting out, with the more cubistic landscapes and then going into the figures. I mean, really, if you look at over the many decades of his careers, ending up in these abstract floral cutouts,
Unbelievable, yeah.
It also just shows that, it's not, I think for me, it's important to be able to move through different ideas. And I think it's not uninteresting that they maybe do become simple. How do I say this? They more cut back, because now more and more what you don't need.
There you go. It's
I think it's actually you learn
deduction.
Yeah, I'm learning more about what I don't need. Yeah. And I think that when I think of Matisse's cutouts, and you compare that with those early cubistic landscapes, we just see his thoughts. I see him thinking, And in those last ones, which looked like they're beautiful, And when I was standing in front of them, it was a show I didn't want to leave. I don't know if you ever gone to a show yet at the Hayward Gallery. Have you ever gone to an art exhibition you didn't want to leave because it's like saying goodbye to a friend, And so I just stood in front of them and I thought, my God, they look like someone did them yesterday. They look like a contemporary artist did them yesterday. Yeah. They're that fresh.
Wow. Is it true that he was half blind already, and that maybe the cleaning lady helped him something? I read somewhere, or he was using a long stick.
He used a long stick to show where it goes, because he was also quite bedridden. So I think also just his physical limitations created a type of wonderful thing that he had to simplify his forms and show where they needed to go and stuff. And I just think that's wonderful. Those cutouts.
Are you doing some sculptures now, planning for this exhibition in April, May?
No, I'm not doing that. What we've done a collaborative book. We're doing 2 art books, collaborative books, yeah. I mean, large sketchbooks, collaborative drawings, and then each of us will show large-scale drawings of our own. But because we're still in the planning stage, I don't want to say too much about what it'll look like.
No. It's just
stay tuned.
So stay tuned. It's in next year in
April.
In April.
I don't have the exact date yet, but April.
But it's cool. It will be already out by then, and so people can. We will put the link for maybe the space or just for them to. If you don't know the exact date, we'll put it also.
Okay.
There. Yeah, cool. I mean, this is so many things I would like to ask more about your works and so on. If you would, I don't know, not many people, I could say the spiritual. There is something spiritual. I mean, I don't want to sound cheesy, but when you would have to explain the spiritual part of your practice and your works, can you give us a little take us a bit closer?
The word spiritual has been used for this newest series of drawings, and it was also a discussion with Bjorn, the curator of the Gallery Parterre, and he wrote something about it in the text, and I can't remember, but he seemed to think they looked like some type of religious imagery, what like those pictures, like not an icon, but there was something else. I can't remember the word, unfortunately. But he felt quite strongly about this. This was not at all an intention of mine. It's something that started coming through, that I started seeing, and I think there was quite an important shift that changed in me. If you look at those landscape drawings we're talking about, there's a lot of they're quite tumultuous. They're stormy, and I was always then quite interested in everything looking like it's about to blow apart, like thinking hurricanes, tornadoes. So that nature in move. Like everything was actually really moving around a lot, spinning and then came those the blobby figurative drawings. That also was in that show in the back, where figures were morphing, and it was usually one figure morphing in and out of different shapes or realities or whatever, and but ultimately still something of the tumultuous, some struggle, and. When I went to the States, that was quite an important year for me, because I cared for my father. He had dementia. He was physically completely capable, so we could do quite a few things together. But he had dementia, and so I had to sort of really function in a very different way than my normal life. I had to get up, make sure he got up, and I had to prepare food in a certain way, and I had to. My life became more ordered for this period, and balanced, and I think that when I came back from this year with my father, I think some of that fed into the new drawings. And there is, I know that we're talking about the spirituality, but I'm coming to that.
No, that's exactly what I was asking.
There's something in the new drawings
happened there
about
that made you transition very fast into this.
Yeah. I think I think this was It was in my head for a long time, but it hadn't taken shape yet, And then the time away was really able for me to make a cut, sort of say, okay, that work in the past is the past, and in myself, so that I could actually restart. It was like a jump start, and I think the new works, have this something about this careful balance.
Exactly, careful balance. Yes. Like you slow down a little bit more, not so like tornado anymore, but just now. But there is super interesting emotion to it. I wouldn't say it's just meditative. There is like all this expression you normally have in your drawings. They became like condensed in some kind of timelessness.
I get. It's also because these drawings are so new. I'm finding also that it's harder for me to talk about them, because I'm still discovering them. But I do know that this attempt at order and balance, but also I think they're more gentle. The colors are more gentle. The black and white drawings, they're very tumultuous. The black and white landscapes. There's, you can almost hear them. And I remember I had very young friend came in. He called me Mummy, but he was, I think, 6 or 7 at the time, Henrik. And he came into my studio looking at these black and white drawings, and he says, "Mummy, you drew the wind." And I remember thinking, what a nice thing to say. And I think these new drawings are so much more about finding balance to settle. There's something, you think that they can't, because you've got this circle on that circle, and then you've got this square, but somehow they sit balanced and quiet. And I'm still working. I'm still, as you see, I'm still don't have it down 100%.
We will follow your work and we'll see where it goes. It's definitely an interesting journey to see. I find really your quality of your work in general very, very, very good and very emotional. So that's why I'm drawn into it. And I know a lot of people. So, but this really drew me, and I wanted to really have a talk with you about these things. Thank you so much for explaining. I'll ask you a few more questions and then we'll let you go. So maybe you can talk a bit about also about the Berlin in general. Like how do you live? How does your year looks like? Are you a person who follows the seasons and then have to go somewhere like many people run, or how do you in general? It's like when is the most beautiful time for you to work? When you work more or less? Maybe just a little bit about life in Berlin.
Okay, well, I think that when I work more or less, it doesn't have much to do with the seasons. I think it just has, I don't know what it has to do with. But yeah, I'm always here. I go away, but I don't leave. Like we were talking about this before. I don't leave for 2 months in the winter, every winter, because I have obligations here. I don't have a normal rhythm of how I work. I work more, and right now I'm working quite a bit, and I'll probably get I'd like to finish 4 or 5 large drawings, and then by that time I'll probably feel like working in clay again, so it's like it changes like that.
So so your inner generator, it's moving you. It doesn't have anything with the some people have their hibernation in the winter. I know some artists, they're like really not doing anything. They say warmer weather comes, my studio, I don't want to put the fire in the stove or whatever, and some are just really working in winter.
Well, I think it is maybe hard to work in summer when it's absolutely beautiful out and it's 8 p.m. and it's light out and all your friends are sitting outside having a glass of wine. And a winter, there's less going on. So, maybe I do tend to work a bit more in the winter, at least in the evenings, because it's already so dark, so early, but and obviously, if I have a show coming up, then I'll work to concentrate on that because there's a deadline. But if there's nothing pressing, or there's not a show on where I need new work, it's nice to have that space to develop new ideas without thinking they're definitely going to be shown in like 4 months. So you want to be able to sort of like let things sort of develop for yourself and see where they're going. So
that's really important. I think once you start really doing more shows and people contact you, it's a little bit can be a struggle, no? Okay, this is for there and this is for there.
But nice. It's nice. I wouldn't say it's a struggle. You just have to organize your head around it. But obviously, I stand behind all my work, so it doesn't always have to be the work I did the last weekend. So there's a lot of I think, unfortunately, many artists think it has to be the work I did, absolute newest work. I think that's more of an attitude that comes from galleries, which was a great opportunity in Parterre for me to show these 3 or 4, including the ceramics, these 4 major cycles of work that all would not exist without one another. Because in commercial galleries, it's hard to do that because if they show work from 2019, they think people are worried, it didn't sell. So it always has to be the absolute newest work and quite homogeneous. And so at least that's my experience. And that's why it was good to be able to show different works from different periods at Parterre. So
I find this exhibition beautiful. It's a big space, two huge spaces actually connected, and some of the
3
sculptures,
actually,
sculptures, and it was a beautiful end of summer. I think it was something end of summer. And your friends made a nice concert. They're really expressive.
Yeah, they did. She Will Listen is called the band.
She Will Listen. I will put their link also. That's just to mention them.
Good
they're worth mentioning.
Yeah, they are worth mentioning, and they did a great job, and it was a great night. That wasn't actually the opening. The opening was on the 6th of June, and that was the catalog release party, because we wanted to do a special event for that, and it was great. It was a wonderful summer, and we had. I think there were vegan sausages, because Bjorn is also vegan, and we had some food, and a lot of people came out, and it was a really fun night.
Yeah, I love it. And that's where we met. I really was stoked with the works, and I was like, I need to talk to this artist.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we met there.
Yeah. Okay, Laura, we'll follow your work. So you see 1 hour flew super fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you so much for coming, and who knows, maybe we do second part, third part, we'll see what
Sounds
comes next.
nice.
Thank you so much for taking time and coming over.
Okay, thanks for inviting me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.